Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales, whether it's from confidence, comfort, and just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help professionals like you improve at sales through process, practice, frameworks, and thinking differently about what you already know. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm with the founder of Catalyst Sale, Mike Simmons. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody.
How have you been?
I have been absolutely awesome.
Me too. I'm afraid I've picked up some bad habits I didn't have before being stuck at home all the time, but otherwise I'm doing great.
What type of bad habits have you picked up?
I feel I'm not, even though I had been working out more prior to an injury, I probably wasn't as disciplined in how good or bad I was eating. I feel like that's a bad habit. And I feel like unless I really draw a firm line, I'm working way more than I was otherwise because I'm just always right here. It's so easy to just work nonstop.
I know I mentioned this guy's name often on the podcast, and we've had him on as a guest a couple of times. The series or the season on If Disney Ran Your Life focused on body that's going on right now. I think that's season 5, and we'll include a link to it. But the season 5 has been absolutely awesome. And if you're looking for some help on some of these things, I know a couple of podcast episodes you could listen to, Jody.
I've heard that's a good show.
It's a very good show.
Yes, I will check that out. If Disney Ran Your Life, season 5, all about body. Well, I certainly could use a couple of reminders on that one. But let's bring something else up, Mike. We actually have a listener question, which Mike loves listener questions. This one came in through the live chat, and it basically says this, Mike: how do you sell not based on price alone?
Great question. And yeah, just as a reminder, you can go to the live chat at catalystsale.com and enter in these questions. If you give us your name, happy to mention where the question came from. This one actually came in as an anonymous question, and it wasn't even a question. It was, can you record a podcast on this topic? And price is one of those things that it's one of those topics that a lot of people want to know about, but nobody likes to talk about in detail. Like customers will ask you about price a little bit too early, and some organizations will get a little bit cagey on how they share price. And some organizations actually look at this as a way that they differentiate themselves in the market as they put price out there. So how do you sell and not be limited to just selling based on price alone? I think one of the biggest pieces that's really important is understand the value that you deliver into an organization. And value is one of those things that's really important to define in a deliberate way. And the best way that I've found to figure out what the value is asking questions that demonstrate an understanding of what's actually happening inside the business relative to the problem that you solve for. So I would figure out a way to get to the thing that people inside the organization value, and more specifically, what problem are they actually trying to solve inside that organization?
Well, that's a great start. If you may think initially, and perhaps you think it because the customer asks about it or directs their questions all about price. So you may think that's what they're after, but really they're trying to solve a different problem. The problem they're trying to solve is not, how do I get this for less? There's a different problem they're trying to solve. So Mike, how do you go about figuring out what that problem is?
Yeah, for me, it's questions. So, let's say someone comes in as an inbound lead. And I know there are a lot of really cool companies that talk about inbound process. And we've had Dan Tyler on the podcast before, where he's talked about inbound. He is one of the original folks that was over at HubSpot. And we've had Jen Spencer talk about this as well from an inbound marketing perspective. But let's say somebody comes in inbound. One of the first questions I want to ask, if I don't have the information readily available, I want to ask them why they came by, how they found us, what inspired them to take the call, why are we talking today? And there's so many different ways that you can ask this question. And we've seen it in instances. I'm sure, like Jody, if you and Rebecca are going to a mall and you're inside a store, someone might ask you the question, why'd you stop by? Or what brings you in here? This is that same kind of question that we can ask people when we're talking to them to get some context or why they're interested in, at a minimum, having a conversation with us, why they're interested in looking around. The conversation could be completely different if someone says, well, I've been struggling with this, and I found out on your website that you do that. Another response could be, my boss said that I need to look into 3 companies that do these things, and you were the first one that came up on this list. Third could be, I was talking to a colleague about something and your name came up. I mean, there's so many different iterations of the response, but that additional piece of data can put us in a position where we can have a better conversation that's in the proper context of what's important to the customer. So I start with asking questions.
If a customer keeps driving the conversation towards price, is that something we should be concerned about, or what does that tell us?
Yeah, I mean, they could be in a situation where they're in a buying mode, and what they need to do in order to meet a requirement that they've got inside their organization is they need to get prices from 3 different vendors so that they can choose the vendor that they want to move forward with. And they're just doing some general due diligence. It could be a situation. What I want to be careful about is making an assumption about why that's important to them. So if they keep coming back to it, may ask that question, why is that important to you? So we keep coming back to price. Why is price important to you? Well, customer might come back and say, I want to make sure I can afford you. Before I move any further down the road, I want to make sure that this is within my budget. Before we move any further, I want to do this. Or they may come back and give that answer that I gave before, which is that they are just in the process of making a decision and they need to compare prices to market. But again, I would ask another question. And that question is, why is that important? What aspect of pricing is important to you? How will pricing impact the decision that you're making? Just want to gather a little bit more information. If they come back and they say, look, come on, man, I just want your price. Just give me your price. If it's available on the website, I point them to the website and they can get information. And we can just say something like, well, we provide volume-based discounts. And as you increase the number of licenses that you're purchasing or increase the term, your relative price will decrease. They may want more detail. One of the questions I might ask, what I might say at that point is something to the effect of, I'm happy to give you a price. I'm happy to share pricing. We're transparent with the pricing that we provide. There are just a couple of questions that I need to answer to in order to give you the proper price, just so that I don't deliver something to you out of context. And I would just be really clear around what those things are. So if you've designed your pricing approach in the context of something that we've talked about a number of different times on the podcast, which is making it really easy for your customers to do business with you, make it really easy for them to understand how you price things, you should have a clear set of questions or variables that you need to answer in order to provide that appropriate price. And just be really direct, ask those questions. If they can't answer those questions, you're either dealing with the wrong person, they're just fishing for something, or something else is going on. And I would just be really comfortable with going back to them and saying, look, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you a price without that information.
Since we're talking about pricing, I realize if I am on a website, or let's say someone sends me a proposal, I'm interested enough that we've gotten that far where I got a proposal. And the first thing I do is I scroll down and I look at the price. And then if I decide, no, that's way out of my ballpark, it's probably over at that point, unless I come back and say, hey, that's too much. Or I come back and say, hey, let's talk about this to make this work. But I will look at the price and then I'll go and read more of the proposal. Or if I'm on a sales page on a website, I'll look at the price and then I'll go back and read the copy on the sales page. So there's really no way around the price piece. And I've never had anyone hire me yet that didn't ask what the price was. So there's no way around it. But that's the interesting piece, though, when I hear this question or the idea to record on this topic, is that's different than price alone. Because if all you're doing is trying to sell based on price, then you're saying it's a commodity, what you offer, and you've got the lowest price or the best price or whatnot. But I like where Mike has taken us, where if you understand the value you deliver, you understand the problem that you're solving, it becomes more than price because you understand what they're doing and you can solve that. You understand truly the value you deliver and that it's worth it. It's an investment and not just a price. So Mike, how do you deal with that when you know someone is interested, but price has to get talked about? How do you personally deal with that? You know someone's interested, you know it's likely they're going to work with you, but price has to come up at some point. Tell us how you handle it.
Yeah, I want to, if it's taken a while to finally get to that point, or we're at a point where we know that there's a high level of interest, the question I like to ask is, when you've purchased something like this before, you've made this kind of decision before, what's that process look like? And then they'll describe whatever the process is. And then from that standpoint, we can kind of get into asking this question, which is, when you've made that kind of purchase and you've gone through the process, where has it failed? And where have you wanted to move forward, but you had to say no? And that's where you can start to reveal price sensitivity, if that's an objective that you have, if that's something you're trying to do. I think that point that you made earlier is really, really important when it comes to proposals. And it's been a while since we've talked about proposals. And we may want to revisit that on an upcoming podcast and add that to the list of tactical ones. But when you think about what Jody just described, gets a proposal, first thing he does is go down and get to the price. That's what every one of your customers does. Every one of your customers does it. I'm sure there's 1 out of 99 that may not do that. They may be very deliberate and read through all the information because they know that the level of commitment and creativity and artwork that went into creating a proposal was worth them reading through all the information. But the majority of people are going to scroll right down to the bottom, scroll right to the price. I would suggest leading with that in your proposal. And the thing that I would do just before you hit on the price point, so make sure it's on the first page. There's not a level of scrolling and not a level of page flipping and not an area where things get lost. Be very clear at the top. What problem are you solving for inside their organization? Why that problem is important to that organization, and then get into the pricing. And if you've got enough room, you can talk about how might follow the pricing if you don't have enough room to get it all on the first page. But what problem are you solving? Why it's important to their organization? That provides the context for delivering the price point that you deliver just a little bit further down on that first page. So I wouldn't avoid the pricing discussion intentionally, other than timing is really important. I don't want to get into pricing right away if we've not started to identify problem, business impact of that problem, be able to connect the dots between that and the value that we're going to potentially be delivering. But that's my view on that, Jody.
Mike, I like what you said, how everyone's going to look at it, the price in the proposal. So just put it up front. That's a great idea because you are just answering the one question they want answered right away. So just put it up front and let them find it there. And then the rest of your proposal, you can talk about the rest of it. So I like that. That's good advice. Well, this was a good topic to talk about, selling on price alone. And I know that's one of the bad habits I've heard you talk about, Mike. So do you want to go into any other bad habits here on this episode?
I think the other one that jumps out, and this kind of gets into the whole value discussion too, is getting into features and benefit discussion rather than being able to articulate a solution. So we talk about, we find ourselves, especially as new sales reps or technical founders who are really excited about the problems we solve in the marketplace. We'll get in there and we'll talk about how we solve those problems. So we created this really cool technology. We created this really interesting workflow. We created this interesting approach. We created this interesting whatever. It does X, Y, or Z. It allows you to compile, 2,000 records and analyze that information in a shorter time period. All of this stuff. You focus on the feature and benefit of the tool, of the software, rather than the actual business impact, the thing that you actually deliver the future that you could see once you've solved those problems, the addressing of the pain. So I would say that's another one of those where if you find yourself talking more about your product than your customer's problem, challenge, things that are impacting the business, you may be falling into a trap that will be relatively easy to compete with because features are a dime a dozen. Your feature, once it's out in the market, it's likely that someone else is trying to build the same feature, is going to incorporate that feature into their product. No matter how cool the feature is, once it's out in the market, people become aware of it and people start designing a way to address it. So suggest focusing more on value, business impact, those other things that help you get a little bit further away from price and a little bit further away from feature and help you differentiate yourself in the marketplace because your customers know that you actually understand what's important to them.
I like that, to help you get away further from price, because price is easy to compete on. Features are easy to compete on. It's the other stuff. That's what matters. So I've heard Mike talk about those as bad habits, focusing on price, focusing on features. Well, Mike, this has been a good conversation, and Mike wants more of your listener questions. So please do send them in. Mike, if we have a question for you, where can we submit it?
It's really cool to see them on the catalystsale.com site in live chat. So do that. That's my preference. If you're not a big live chat fan, you don't like putting your information in that kind of forum, then just send an email to podcast@catalystsale.com. Either one of those will get to us. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.